So, on the eastern front of the European theater of operations, the Russians have, from 1943 summer through 1944 summer, driven from central Russia near Kursk all the way to Warsaw. There have been two uprisings in the capital of Poland in 43, spring of 43. The Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto rose up against the Germans and were slaughtered. And then in late summer, August through October 44, the nationalist Poles rose up and were slaughtered as the Russian army sat back and ate borscht and caviar and drank vodka across the river, watching it like a spectator sport. But once the Warsaw Uprising was over, the Red Juggernaut continues on into Germany. This is a war of civilizations. Hitler got what he wanted. He got a no mercy, no quarter war with Soviet Russia. And now he's losing it. As the Russians enter German territory, a terrible thing begins to be told about what happens when the Russians arrive. The first line combat troops, they're pretty okay. They've got a job to do. They are fighting in battle. They don't have time to screw around. But the second line troops that come in after them, they'll go to a German city block or to a village square. Frau kommen! Frau kommen! Women, come. Two words in German that the Russian soldiers know. Every woman, I call them women, from age 10 or 11 up to little old ladies who comes out is systematically raped by units of Soviet soldiers. Gang rape is a policy of the Red Army. It's a way of breaking the Germans' will. And those women that don't show up when the call, women come, arrives, they are hunted out. And often, for the sin of hiding, their families are butchered in front of them and then they're gang raped. The only army that approached the Russians in its use of massive rape as a systematic form of crowd control and psychological warfare were the Japanese. But this is something new. I mean, the Germans invented all sorts of new horrors to humankind. This is something that the Red Army adds to the catalog of human crimes. So the Russians are grinding their way westward into Germany. In February and March of 45, the American General Eisenhower, who is in Western Germany, who is in command of the Anglo-American forces that have come in from the West, we'll talk about them soon, makes it clear that he is not going to race the Russians to Berlin. Eisenhower concludes that Berlin has limited military value and that it will cost up to 1 million American dead or wounded, or British American dead or wounded, to take the city. He'll let the Russians absorb those casualties. And Stalin says, oh, yeah, Germany, Berlin, it's not a big deal. And he says quietly to his generals, get Berlin. You're going to be in a race for Berlin. Marshal Zhukov, you're going to be in a race with Marshal Konev. Marshal Konev, Marshal Zhukov, whoever gets to Berlin first, whoever gets to the Unter der Linden and the Brandenburg Gate and the Tiergarten wins, and it will be recognized as a hero of the Soviet Union. So Stalin really wants Berlin, and he really wants Hitler, personally. So the Americans and the British forswear Berlin, and they get as far as Turgau in central and eastern Germany, as far as Czechoslovakia. We're going to talk about that again. The Russians move into Berlin in April and early May of 45. It is the apocalypse. The Germans of Berlin, who have seen Kaisers come and go, who have seen the Roaring Twenties and the Bauhaus culture and the nightclubs of cabaret, who've seen the rise of Hitler and who were Hitler's biggest cynics, now experience apocalypse. The city of Berlin is leveled, building by building, street by street. Almost nothing is left there. The Russians go through every sewer, every city street, and their goal is to capture the Reichstag and to have the city of Hitler. And we will come to that moment at the very end of this week, or at least of this part of the story. Next time, the Western Front in the European Theater of Operations.